What's up everyone, this is Dariusz Kalbarczyk, co-founder of AIMP Poland, JS Poland, AI Poland and Angular Master.dev. Welcome back to the AI Master Podcast. Today's guest is a highly respected figure in the world of data and Python. He is a retail data consultant and the author of the third edition of the Pandas Cookbook. Ladies and gentlemen, Will Ayd. Hi, Will. How are you?
I'm doing good. Doing good. Beautiful day today. The weather is getting nicer on the east coast of the U.S., so that's always a good feeling when spring rolls around.
For those who don't know you yet, please tell us about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Will Ayd. I am a data consultant is my day job. So I've done that for consulting probably like 8 years. Prior to that, I've always kind of worked in the field of data. So I started my professional journey 15 years ago and just kind of got a job that required a lot of Excel work and using SAP tools. So not necessarily the tools that I'm using today, but that was kind of the foundation. And yeah, it just amazed me like when I worked at a company 15 years ago, how these like $1 million processes were all fueled by Excel macros. Kind of crazy to think about. And I'm sure that's in practice in some companies now, but about 10 years ago, I just kind of like fell into using Python and Pandas. To be honest, I don't know why or really pushed me into that in the first place. I knew I wanted to get better at like data analysis. I heard about Python as a language and I heard about Pandas as a library. So I started using that in my professional career. Yeah, about 10 years ago, I was just amazed that like, wow, I could do all this with tools that are freely available and it just works a lot better and scales better than everything I kind of done up into that point in time. So yeah, that's like my professional journey started Excel, started Pandas somewhere in the middle. And then shortly after using Pandas in my professional career, I got more involved in the open source space. So that's kind of tangential to everything I do to make money and make a living. But, you know, free time and weekends or when I'm in between consulting engagements, I love to work on open source tooling. It's a good way to network, sharpen your skills, stay on top of all the latest and greatest going on in the space and make a name for yourself, right? So I've been a Pandas maintainer for 7, 8 years, time flies. And I'm involved in other data projects as well. So the PyArrow project is one I'm a committer to as of last year. And I just love kind of messing around in that space and getting to know people that work in the area.
That sounds amazing. So you started 10 years ago, so you're ready now for this AI world.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's kind of crazy how fast that space has evolved. And even as someone like heavy on the open source side, it is so hard to stay at the bleeding edge. So I'm even playing the catch-up game a little bit myself, as I'm sure a lot of people are listening to this podcast and that are interested in data. It's crazy how fast that space has evolved. But it's exciting at the same time. And you know, the fact that you could use open source tools with AI kind of hand in hand, it's really awesome to see where we've come.
You worked with clients across industry like apparel, pharma, advertising, and B2B. What are some common data-related challenges they face?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when you work in these different industries and have clients in them, you know, the number one data challenge that these companies face is actually matching what they do on the technical programming, data-related side with how their business operates, right? So there's always this kind of pressure, I think, for people to like be like, well, here's a tool that'll fix your issues, or here, we now bought Power BI or Tableau, all your problems are kind of solved. But that tends to be like a really naive point of view, right? So the way that you actually get into these different industries and influence some change is to step away from the technical side a little bit. I mean, technical skills are awesome, but you really need to kind of understand like how the business operates first and foremost, and then come back with the creativity of, okay, well, now that I understand like what the sales team is trying to do or the operations team or whatever team it is, and I understand the data challenges that they're facing, now I can actually come in and build something, right? So just putting the pencil down and listening for like the first month of any engagement, I think is super important. There's also a continual challenges with like data quality, data management, and I think historically, 15 years ago on the data side, people weren't really acting like software engineers as much, and there's still a gap between software and data engineering, but it's been closing a little bit over 15 years ago. So you're starting to see things like data testing and uh, uh, version control and things like that's kind of been commonplace in software engineering. That's slowly coming around on the data side. And when you come into a company that doesn't have that set up, it's an easy win to be like, okay, well, let's just set up like some data tests and make sure our data models are correct. Because the traditional way of we'll just go in manually and kind of check our data or check our data models is just so slow. And again, 10, 15 years ago, the tools didn't exist to automate that, but now it's relatively easy to come in and influence that kind of change in an organization, regardless of the industry that they're in.
How do you see the role of AI evolving within traditional data consulting work, especially in areas like ERP, CRM, or reporting?
Like we talked about before, it's changed so fast, so who knows how right or wrong I'm going to be on this. But to me, I think AI is really going to help push more towards open source tooling in the enterprise. And again, 15 years ago, when I worked in the data field, that was much less common, right? You bought a big ERP from SAP, Oracle, one of those kind of companies, and you bought their reporting solution as well. But what was really challenging about doing that is that knowledge was just like really locked away to a few specialists, right? You had extremely high paid consultants that had used those tools for 20, 30 years. Uh, a lot of those companies had pretty bad document knowledge portals where you'd go in and, oh, I had this bug. What can I find? And it's like you think about that process and using an ERP or a bolt-on reporting system, it's so slow, right? So when you have these AI bots that understand more open tools and you ask them questions of like, well, how can I solve this issue? It just helps you kind of get to your end goal a little bit faster, right? Like even as a technical person, really your end game is to not write code, is to solve problems, and the code is a means to an end. And having AI help you generate code faster or evaluate your code, even if it's not perfect, I mean, just having that is something that helps maybe clear writer's block or whatever it is. If you could use that and use that with open source tooling, it's really going to change the landscape, I think, and make it so that traditional consulting model with like, hey, I have 20, 30 years experience with this ERP. I'm the only one that knows this. I think is going to be less common going forward as it's like, okay, well, I know how to use AI. I generally know all these tools. We can compose something really quick and really powerful in a short amount of time using all that together.
What's your perspective on how open source tools like Pandas are powering more intelligent AI-ready pipelines today?
Yeah, well, Pandas is just one tool in a huge ecosystem of libraries, right? So, and it's been that way for a while. It's just, hey, do you want to do some kind of Python-powered AI? Great. You're probably using Pandas or Polars or some other data frame library that is in the mix to cleanse your data, manage it, move it along. I mean, these are just like really common tasks. Of course, it's not the only tool that you're going to use, but the fact that Pandas and Polars and all these data frame libraries are well integrated in the system makes it so if you're using, I don't know, a PyTorch or some library like that, for any tabular data, you're probably taking something like Pandas and moving that data along the way. So Pandas is one cog in the great machine of AI, especially in the Python space. So it's kind of cool to see it there.
Let's dive into your book, Pandas Cookbook. What was your motivation for writing a third edition now?
A lot of it was just opportunity and timing and luck. So I don't know how good of an answer that is, but I always had kind of wanted to write a book. It's a cool idea. Like I felt like I had the expertise, I had the knowledge. But writing a book's a lot of effort, right? So I'd had the offer come up in the past. It's like, I really don't have the time to do that. And it's not something you do for like money, right? So it's not something that you would really step away from your job to write a book, I think. But it just kind of happened. Like I was in between consulting engagements last year. I had a few months of downtime until my next project was going to start. And it was like literally the day I stopped my previous consulting engagement, the publisher reached out to me and was like, "Hey, do you want to write a book?" I mean, totally random, right? They had no idea that I had just kind of uh, had all these months free, and I didn't know that a book publisher really needed something. So it was just like I got that email in my inbox. I was like, "Wow, like this timing is like surreal. Like, how could this happen that way?" So I mean, that was really it. They reached out to me at the right time. I had some time to do it before my next job started, and I was like, "This is too perfect. I just need to jump on this now and take advantage of it."
This version focuses on Pandas 2x. What's new and exciting about it that previous version didn't offer?
I mean, to me, the big thing in Pandas 2 and beyond, which is kind of how we've pitched this book, is Apache Arrow compatibility. So for people that aren't aware, and it's kind of hard to talk about because Apache Arrow is not like something an end user necessarily uses. It's like the author of a library probably uses Apache Arrow. But that's something that's come around in many different ways in the 2 series, right? So we have now you can create data types that wrap Apache Arrow data types. You can use PyArrow as a D-type engine, I think is the word for it. We have ADBC drivers. So this might sound like to someone that's not kind of deeper into the library, like, okay, so what does that mean? You know, this book kind of lays it out in more detail and talks about like, here's why you really should be using Apache Arrow, data types, IO engines, and SQL drivers, mainly because of performance, but also data correctness, nullability handling. I mean, it's just kind of this radical way of solving all the issues that Pandas has had for years. For the people that don't know, Wes McKinney, who started Pandas many years later, was one of the founders or co-founders of the Apache Arrow project, right? So he kind of came into Apache Arrow with all this knowledge of like, God, here's like what I messed up on Pandas originally, or what we messed up on Pandas originally. And if only we had this new library, wow, we could solve so many issues, make it more scalable, and just make it work better as a tool. And so I think Apache Arrow started back in 2016, 2017. Don't quote me on the year there. But I think in the past few years, it's really kind of matured and evolved to the point where if you use it in collaboration with Pandas, again, your code and it can just be way more performant, scalable, and clean. But it's not the default type system in Pandas just yet. So you have to kind of know and opt into using all the Apache Arrow features. So my book kind of highlights that, talks about it, and gives you use cases for doing that. And yeah, I mean, there's a ton else that kind of comes up in the 2.x series, but that is like the number one thing that I think is really changing the game with Pandas.
Hi, my name is Derek Kalbarczyk, and you are listening to the AI Master Podcast by AI Poland, a space where we deep dive into how artificial intelligence is changing the way we think, work, and live. Thanks for tuning in. If you are enjoying this episode, take the moment to subscribe the channel and ring the bell so you never miss a new conversation. Your book is structured as a cookbook, practical, task-based recipes. Why did you choose that format, and who is it for?
That's funny. I did not choose the format, right? So I wrote the 3rd edition. The first 2 were kind of done. And it was interesting because when I first came into doing it, it admittedly was like a little awkward for me. You know, like the challenge I think of teaching people some things, especially in a book, is like everyone has a different way of learning, right? Like some people learn well through video, others want a book and they want a book written in this format in this way. So I personally absorb a lot of information through books. That was a good start, but I'd never done the cookbook format before. So it was really a challenge for me up front to take a step back and be like, okay, this is the third edition. We're not dramatically or drastically changing how this is done. But how can I take the way that I kind of think I've learned in the past and make that into a more recipe-based approach? And it was a good challenge because I feel like it turned out well, right? Like I still have this, I think in the book, overarching narrative of, okay, when you do the earlier chapters, we're kind of a little bit more basic in terms of the features and functionality of pandas that we're using. But as we go through all these recipes, like we're getting progressively more complex and more advanced. So yeah, I again, that format was kind of given to me, and I still took that progression like narrative I wanted to put into it, but was able to fit it into the cookbook format. I've gotten great feedback on. I think, again, everyone learns differently, but people that want this recipe-based approach, like to them, they can go in and they could just be like, look, I just want to see immediately, like, I don't want to get bogged down in theory. I just want to see, like, how can this be used and get excited about, like, real world use cases instead of this big, like, theoretical, talk for many chapters. In terms of who it's for, I mean, if you use pandas, it's for you. Or if you're thinking about using pandas, it's for you. Now, naturally, I think more people are going to be like beginners and maybe intermediate level that feel like they've hit a wall that are going to gravitate towards this book. But even if you think you are an advanced user of pandas, I would just kind of challenge you to think about giving the book a read or a review because, again, with all that's changed in 2.x and PyArrow, like to me, it's still a little murky the way we have everything set up in pandas. I say that as a maintainer, right? Like it's really hard, especially a project of the scale and size of pandas. You'd have all these great ideas, but to actually like put them into place and not mess up this workflow that people have had for 10, 15 years is really challenging. So even if you're an advanced user and you think you've figured it out, I think there's a lot there that can kind of challenge you to rewrite the way you're doing pandas, and in a way that is going to be more PyArrow based and just kind of scale further out into the future than what pandas has been able to do for the past 10 or 15 years.
What are the most common pandas mistakes people make when working with real-world data sets?
10 years ago, Pandas as a library was really proud of like, hey, this is how we handle null data. It works great, like missing data. And it made sense in terms of the ecosystem because before Pandas, I think people were mostly using NumPy or some kind of mix of string work in Python, and missing data wasn't naturally handled well there. So Pandas build like, hey, we have this custom way of dealing with missing values. It's great. It's amazing. Well, Pandas has been around long enough that that way of handling missing data actually isn't all that great compared to tools that are available nowadays. So I think by just jumping in and using the default system, the way missing values are handled is really annoying in Pandas, and it's kind of a shame. Like it can cause like really subtle bugs, issues. It causes performance problems. So that's number one, and that's something that I kind of talk about a lot in the book is like the default type system in Pandas takes you down this rabbit hole of like weird missing value handling. So if you step away from that and use one of the other type systems, whether it's the arrow-based one or the extension type system that Pandas has, your data sets and your data flows become a lot simpler. So if you've been bitten by that before, give the cookbook a look. We'll get you out of kind of the madness of the nullability handling in Pandas.
You include recipes on handling big data and performance tuning. What are your go-to tips for scaling Pandas efficiently?
Yeah, recently it's been opting into the arrow type system. Okay, so that's probably, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but if you use the arrow type system in Pandas, your scalability just increases exponentially, and as does your performance. So that's number one. Number two would just be being cognizant about the type of data that you're working with, right? So if you're like me and you came from an Excel background, you don't really think about data types, right? It's just kind of there. And I think a lot of people also start with that in pandas. They're okay to not have like really clean data types. Maybe they have a lot of Python object data types, or uh, they're just using too large of an integer for the data that they're storing. If you if you're really working with a large data set, you can't just be like, well, I'm not worried about it, right? You have to be a little more prescriptive about like, okay, well, here's the type of data I should use for this column or that one. And by making those decisions correctly, and there's this whole recipe on, I think, even working with a CSV file and optimizing it in the book. And I forget what the actual number was, but it's something like, wow, just by a couple lines of code and picking different data types, we're reducing the memory footprint of what we're working with by like 80%, right? So, and that can make or break the difference between getting a data set to work on your machine and getting it out of memory exception.
How does Pandas work with tools like NumPy, PyArrow, or DuckDB to create AI data science workflows?
Yeah, the big thing about pandas historically has been interoperability. So you listed three tools there. NumPy is the oldest, right? NumPy has been around the longest time. Pandas was built on NumPy. So, especially 10 years ago when we were more in the, I don't know, traditional machine learning era than we were today, that NumPy interoperability was amazing, right? Like people would want to take their pandas data frame, send it to some kind of SciPy or scikit-learn job, and whether they knew it or not, like NumPy was kind of the communication language behind the scenes that moved all that data. Now, more recently, you have PyArrow and DuckDB listed. Those are what we would consider like Apache Arrow compatible tools. So PyArrow obviously is built on top of Apache Arrow in Python. DuckDB is not necessarily associated with the Apache project, but they yeah, I would consider them Apache Arrow compatible. So that means that you could take data that's sitting in a pandas data frame and push it to a DuckDB table, or go in the opposite direction without copying the data, which is huge, saves a lot of performance, helps your scalability. And I mean, we could just kind of go down the list. This is a huge advantage of the Apache Arrow project, is helping that interoperability between libraries. So PyArrow, DuckDB, you could talk about polars in that mix as well. You can zero copy between pandas and all those libraries. And, there's an innumerable amount of visualization libraries that can take that data and, again, not require you to copy it and just kind of visualize it. So anything that's Apache Arrow based is getting that advantage today.
Many listeners are doing exploratory data analysis, ADA. Which techniques from the book are most useful for quick insights?
Yeah, I just think being able to visualize things quickly can be really helpful. So Pandas has a great set of plotting functions and also interoperates well with tools like Seaborn. So to me, anytime I'm doing EDA, I'm just sitting in a notebook probably, or IPython session, and I'm just kind of going through like some theories. Normally you're coming in with some kind of inclination as to what the data set is. It's pretty rare that someone just like plops a big data set down on your desk. It's like, hey, work with this. Whatever idea it is in your mind that you're kind of going into that data set with, you could challenge it. You can try and confirm it, but a lot of that's coming back from just using the plotting calls in pandas and some of the, again, visualization libraries like Seaborn. Pigwalker is a good one if you want more of like a drag and drop kind of EDA approach. There's an innumerable amount, and we go through a lot of them in the book.
Let's talk about time series. What should people know about working with dates and time in pandas?
Dates and times are crazy, man. Like, I still feel like it's hard for me to grasp how complicated it could be at different points in time. And what I really like about pandas, and I think it's an awesome feature of the library, is just how easy it makes it to aggregate timestamps into certain buckets or maybe disaggregate. The library started in the financial domain. So just being able to analyze time series data sets was really important. Uh, there's this whole thing, and we have in the Pandas Cookbook an entire chapter dedicated towards time series manipulation, right? And it goes into detail about this whole datetime index and what the different properties are of that and how you can kind of use that, manipulate it to visualize time series data really easily. So actual technical guidance, I'll put you towards that chapter in the book. It's either 9 or 10 off the top of my head. But yeah, and it just in general, I think it's amazing how Pandas makes datetime manipulation so much easier than really any other tool that I found, especially if you compare it to like SQL. I don't think SQL has the kind of expressiveness and functionality that you would get for datetime handling that you would get in Pandas.
You also include guidelines on reshaping, filtering, and SQA-style merging. How do those techniques play into advanced analytics or AI pipelines?
Yeah, I just think any advanced analytics or AI pipeline, a lot of your work effort is going to be in cleansing data, reshaping data, and these are the tools that Pandas built to solve. You don't ever just get like this clean data set for an AI pipeline. You're like, okay, great, I could just train my AI using this data set. That's not how it works, right? Like you're combining a bunch of different data sets, you're doing some kind of cleansing routines, and you want to do it in a way that's reproducible and kind of easy to read and understand as a developer. I mean, all those techniques just play a part in kind of achieving that goal.
One of your goals is to help people become idiomatic Pandas users. What does it mean and why does it matter?
As I mentioned before, Pandas has changed a lot. It's been around a long time, right? So, and will continue to change, right? So what I tried to do with this book is find the right balance of, I don't want people like diving into like the inner workings of Pandas to write this like super optimized thing, even if it meant like, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice a little performance in this recipe just to give something that's easy to read and clean. And you know what, it kind of works both ways, right? Like when you're writing code, it's part the developer's responsibility to write code that's efficient and readable and works well and performs and scales. But it's also the library developer's responsibility to meet the user halfway, right? So I wanted to write code that I felt like will work today. And if there's an optimization path in the future for the Pandas library to meet its developers somewhere, make code faster, make it more scalable, it would be at that inflection point that I've kind of put into the code. And again, like the main goal is like, I want people to write code that they don't need to change again a year or two from now when a new release comes out. And is that really possible? I don't know. I mean, inevitably there's going to be some API change and breakage that happens one or two releases from now that who would have known or thought about. But yeah, to me, idiomatic is just like pushing people down the path of here's a nice, clean, expressive way of writing your code that's going to perform well. And even if it's not the absolute number one most optimal thing today, the Pandas team should meet you there, and you don't have to dive into the internals and kind of hack around all these things that may change in a release or two.
What's your favorite chapter or recipe in the book? Something you wish more developers knew?
My favorite chapter is the one on time series handling. The reason why is this one particular recipe, which I kind of like lucked into, I guess, deals with sensor data collected by the city of Chicago and have like all these different sensors out there from like 2017. And I don't know, it's a few million data points or whatever. I really liked this recipe in particular because it's like, okay, let's load and visualize what this time series data looks like. And you can kind of see like this line chart. Okay, it looks like a line chart, but then you're like, wait a sec, there's like a couple weird things about this data set. Like my senses are kind of getting thrown off, right? There's like gaps in the data. There's it doesn't look right. So then it's like, okay, well, we started with this. We kind of generated the simplistic plot. Something didn't feel right to us. Let's dive in a little bit deeper. And as you dive in deeper, you start to uncover like all these issues with the data quality. It's like, okay, what can we do to fix these? what trade-offs do we need to make? Is there a perfect solution? Well, the answer is no, there actually isn't a perfect solution to this analytical process. So we need to kind of document and talk about like the trade-offs that we're going to make in terms of how we want to analyze and process this data set. So yeah, it's in the visualization chapter, dealing with Chicago sensor data from 2017. It was just awesome because I think it's what I do in real life, right? Like I'll visualize something and it's like, that doesn't look right. Like let's kind of second guess and challenge and dive a little deeper into that. And to me, like there's a big disconnect between taking a class and reading a book sometimes and going out into the real world and dealing with this like crazy messy data that people give you. That to me was the best recipe that I could find. It was like, you know what, this isn't just like a theoretical book exercise. This is like something I could see happening in my day job.
How did you and co-author Matt Harrison collaborate on this edition? What was the writing and editing process like?
Actually, on this one, we did not collaborate together too much, right? So I talked with Matt a couple times. Matt did the second edition, and since then has kind of had his own successful career independently publishing books. So I think they probably reached out to him first, and he was like, I don't need to write the third edition. I have my own thing going on. And that's how they kind of came to me, Pact being the publisher. And so I took his work and started with what he had, and we had kind of free reign to modify or tweak anything that we wanted. And Matt's really successful, has a lot of great content out there, but there's a lot of stuff that wasn't really in my voice, right? So you start writing and you have to try and create this like really continuous, clean, it all feels like one author approach to the book. So I started with a lot of what Matt did, but then also threw out a lot of stuff, brought some new stuff in, reevaluated. Okay, does this sound like it's written by one person, and kind of tweaked from there to make it sound really consistent. So yeah, that was the process, and we did that over the course of 5-6 months, I think. So writing wise, like I said, I was in between consulting engagements, so I had a good amount of time. My goal was to like get as much done up front as possible. I don't know if my publisher liked that. They kind of wanted to go one chapter at a time. And I was like, well, look, I'm starting a new job in a couple of months. I need to like get this done and over with. So I'm just going to sit down and write a couple chapters this week and send it off. And as you get the feedback, let me know. So I actually really like doing that because I got a little bit ahead of the editing process. And what was nice about trying to complete the full book first and then going back to edit was that I had a good idea of what I wanted the entire process to look like. I mean, even, when you started, I think I was like 4 or 5 chapters in, and it's like, I kind of had an idea, but I really don't know how this book is going to finish off. So if I go on chapter by chapter, I felt like it might have been a little bit more challenging to have it seem like cohesive and kind of all building and accumulating towards one end goal. So yeah, in the first 2 to 3 months, I wrote the entire book in a first pass. And then the editing process was all about getting challenged on the technical content, the way things were written, using different words or different lead-ins or things like that to kind of make it sound more cohesive. So that's what that whole process was like. It was awesome. I mean, my editors were awesome. They gave great feedback. They really helped me make the book the best book it could be. So I was really happy with that.
The book includes access to bonus material like code files and Discord. Can you tell us more about what's included?
Yeah. So with any packed book, I believe, when you purchase it, you can download a full color PDF version of the book. So if you need the book on the go, even if it's a physical copy, you have that PDF version that you could use in full color to search, navigate, save on your own. So that's a nice bonus material that Pact includes. In terms of the Discord, they have a Discord channel for maybe all of their books, if not a good deal of them. And it's just a place where if you have any questions, You can come in and chat. I'm sitting in the Discord, so if you want to connect with me directly in a chat session, I'm there and happy to answer questions and help you really get the most out of the book. So I think it's really nice that Pack does that. Just having the PDF is awesome, and then having a way to like directly connect with the author. It's cool as a reader. It's cool for me as well. I love meeting people that have read the book and learned from it and have questions.
Where can our listeners buy the book and who would benefit from it the most? Analysts, engineers, students?
You can buy the book on Amazon if you want to, print edition Kindle. I would also check if you're looking to buy the Pact Publishing website as well. So Pact, a lot of times we'll even run sales and promotions where it could be a good deal cheaper to buy from them directly. So I would check both those if you're interested and find the one that works better for you. But yeah, in terms of who would benefit from it, I mean, to me, like Pandas is such a fundamental tool in the Python landscape for data analysis. I wouldn't say it's quite the same reach as SQL, but it's not far behind, right? So SQL is a tool that is used by all those groups, analysts, engineers, students. I think Pandas is the same way, right? Like if you fall into any of those groups, really, if you're doing any kind of data work, to me, it's just hugely advantageous to have knowledge of Pandas. Python is like a glue language, especially if you're working in cloud systems today. So just knowing how Pandas works is going to help you understand how like a whole ecosystem of tools works and just really be a huge key that unlocks a lot of capability, regardless of if you're a front-end analyst or a back-end engineer, a student that's just kind of starting their data journey.
If someone wants to go beyond Pandas into more AI-heavy workflows, where do you recommend they go next?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, to me, any of the popular AI libraries that interoperate with Pandas is a great stepping stone, and I'm thinking like PyTorch as a really good example. Me personally, when I learn things, it's like, okay, well, I know this. How can I take that knowledge and kind of iterate the next step and kind of tweak something slightly? So a tool like, again, PyTorch to me is a good next step because it interoperates well with Pandas. So if you know Pandas and you have that kind of mindset, it's not like that's one less thing you have to learn PyTorch, right? And to learn how to get data into a format that a machine learning model or AI model may appreciate. So I think that's helpful. There's, of course, the traditional tools like scikit-learn for traditional machine learning is great as well. There's just an innumerable amount of libraries from there. But generally, I think if you know how to work with tabular data and you know how to cleanse it, then it's much easier to take that next step and specialize into whatever AI specific tool or library it is that you'd like to use.
What are some of the lesser known but valuable skills you believe are essential for long-term success in tech?
Yeah, number one, I think I mentioned this in one of the early questions, is to like actually not get too caught up in the technology up front, right? So if you're working at an organization of some size, you really need to understand how the organization operates. Your goal is to not necessarily, I mean, sometimes it is, right? Sometimes you get a task like, I need you to implement this tool or build this solution. But more generally, and somewhere along that chain, it's really starting with like, we need to solve this operational problem or organizational issue, right? So the closer you get to understanding how the business operates and what issue it is they're trying to solve, then the technology really becomes a means to an end. And that's all it should be. It's so easy to get caught up on like, this tool is so cool, and it is like, I mean, I geek out about technology as well, but in a bubble, it's really worthless. It's all about like influencing change within an organization or some kind of structure. So always focus on that. And I think that's going to pay dividends in the long term. The only other thing, which is also very generic advice, but just build your network, right? I think in the technology space, people sometimes forget that like the network and the human element is still the most important thing, right? Humans make the decisions, we work and connect with one another. So just build the biggest network you can. And that's the best thing you can do to to have long-term success in the field.
How do you stay motivated and focused when working on complex or long-running data projects?
I really love what I do, and I feel like loving what you're working on is the number one thing to stay motivated. So, that's not to say like you should be discouraged if you don't love what you do. Maybe it'll take time. Maybe you just need to run to the right project, but maybe it's not for you. You don't know. I mean, data is not a field for everybody, but I would just always push people towards like questioning, do they really love doing it? And if so, it becomes much easier to stick with something. If you don't love what you do, it's a lot harder to get motivated. I'm not saying, it's always more complicated than, I'm just going to leave my job because I don't love it. I wish it was that easy for everyone. God, I'm so lucky to just like be in a field and love what I do. But I just hope that everyone at least strives for that in some form or another. Because if you love the job that you have and the work that you do, I mean, you don't really need to do anything extra to stay motivated. You naturally are by just really enjoying the work that you do.
Do you have any routines or productivity habits that help you stay on track during intense consulting work?
Yeah, I definitely try and be really efficient with my time in consulting, but also not like work like 100 hours a week or something, right? So getting a life outside of your job is really important. I'm a big fan of do not disturb, right? So there's many people, and it's not personal, but my phone is almost always on do not disturb, and I just check it, when I feel like I have the time and motivation to really answer my phone. Obviously, like, my mom and my wife can get through the do not disturb filter. But even my best friend, and he gets it, but it's like, I'll check my phone when I check my phone. So I think just kind of tuning out noise and distractions that can happen at any point in time really works for me. Routines, I try to stay active and healthy and have a workout routine, take my dog for walks, get outside. I think all that stuff is just really important to stay happy and healthy with what you're doing.
What kind of music, if any, do you listen to while coding or writing?
Oh man, I'm going to disappoint some people. I am super boring and I cannot multitask. So I do not listen to any music while coding or writing. It's just like, I can't do it. Like I'm a big music fan. I mean, you could probably see behind me, I have a ton of like music posters. So if I'm listening to music, I try to like go deeper into the music, and it's like, well, how can I go deep into the music while I'm also going deep into my coding? So I can't do it. So instead, I just like don't even try. I just kind of sit in silence and enjoy the beauty of the code I'm looking at or writing as best as I can.
If you weren't working in tech, what other profession would you like to try?
This one's easy. I love to cook. I'm a big fan of cooking. I always have this conversation with my wife. Like if I had to stop tomorrow doing tech for whatever reason, 100% would be a cook. I don't know. I just love making meals. I love making meals for others. I love the process, the smells, the tastes, all that comes out of it. And just to be able to like build something and share it with other people, I think is super cool.
What's your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
At the end of my workday, my dog's ready to go for a walk, right? So especially when it's beautiful outside, take him on the leash, go to the park, play fetch for 30 minutes or an hour. I mean, to me, that just like sets the tone for the evening. So dogs are awesome. I love having a dog, and just, makes your life so happy and chill. So I'll just do that, get ready, go into the kitchen, cook a meal, and sit down and watch some TV with my wife. That's usually my routine in the evenings. That's a great way to unwind and just enjoy the evening.
Will, thank you. Thank you so much. It was so amazing having you here in this podcast today. Will, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a real pleasure having you on the show, and I'm sure our listeners learned a lot. And folks, if you want to hear more, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and join us next time on the AI Master Podcast.